The helicopter shudders violently as the first rocket streaks upward through the Mogadishu sky, a flash of fire and metal tearing into the rotor blade. In seconds, the aircraft spirals, trailing smoke, crashing into the narrow streets below. Radios explode with panic. Another call comes in. Another Blackhawk is down. American soldiers who expected a 1-hour daylight raid now find themselves trapped in a hostile city of 1 million people, surrounded on all sides. Gunfire erupts from windows, rooftops, alleyways. The streets become kill zones. Convoys are lost. Maps mean nothing. Night falls fast, and with it, the realization that this mission has gone catastrophically wrong. What began as a precision operation has turned into a desperate fight for survival, where every corner hides an enemy, every delay costs lives, and extraction is no longer guaranteed. This is Mogadishu, October 1993, where modern warfare collides with urban chaos. In the early 1990s, Somalia was a nation without a state. The collapse of Siad Barre's regime in 1991 fractured the country into clan-controlled territories, ruled by warlords who fought for power amid widespread famine. International images of starving civilians pushed the United Nations to intervene, initially to secure humanitarian aid routes. The United States joined the mission under the belief that limited military force could stabilize the situation long enough for relief efforts to succeed. But by 1993, the mission had shifted. The focus was no longer food distribution, it was manhunting. Mohammed Farah Aid had emerged as the most powerful warlord in Mogadishu, openly defying UN authority. His militia attacked peacekeepers, killing 24 Pakistani soldiers in June 1993. From that moment, Aid became the primary target. The UN authorized his arrest, and the United States deployed Task Force Ranger, an elite rapid reaction unit designed for high-speed capture missions. The force included Army Rangers, Delta Force operators, Air Force combat controllers, and the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. The plan for October 3, 1993, appeared straightforward. Intelligence indicated that Aid's senior lieutenants were meeting in a building near the Olympic Hotel, deep in Mogadishu. Task Force Ranger would insert by helicopter, fast rope into position, capture the targets, load them onto ground convoys, and extract within an hour. It was a mission profile they had rehearsed repeatedly. The risk, commanders believed, was manageable. At 3:32 p.m., helicopters lifted off. Blackhawks and Little Birds thundered over the city, drawing immediate attention. Somali militiamen and armed civilians poured into the streets, alerted by the unmistakable sound of rotor blades. As Rangers fast-roped down, Delta operators moved toward the target building, breaching rooms and detaining suspects. Within minutes, Aid's lieutenants were in custody, but the operation was already unraveling. Somali fighters, many armed with AK-47s and RPG-7 launchers, began firing from every direction. The narrow streets magnified the chaos. Convoys attempting to reach the extraction point became disoriented, blocked by crowds, debris, and intense gunfire. Then came the moment that changed everything. A rocket-propelled grenade struck Super 6-1, a Blackhawk piloted by Cliff Woolcott. The helicopter crashed several blocks from the target site. Instantly, the mission shifted from capture to rescue. Rangers were ordered to secure the crash site, but the force was now spread thin. Communications became strained as multiple units reported heavy contact. While commanders attempted to reorganize, a second catastrophe occurred. Another Blackhawk, Super 6-4, was hit and went down deeper inside the city. Two separate crash sites, both surrounded by hostile forces, meant Task Force Ranger was now fighting a defensive battle on unfamiliar ground. At the second crash site, Delta Force snipers Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart volunteered to be inserted despite overwhelming odds. They understood the risk. The request was denied twice, then finally approved. Dropped near the wreckage, the two men fought their way through crowds of armed Somalis, setting up a perimeter around the downed helicopter. They held off attackers with precision fire, buying time for the wounded crew inside. As ammunition ran low, they continued fighting until they were killed. Their actions would later earn them the Medal of Honor, the first awarded since Vietnam. As daylight faded, the situation worsened. Rangers and Delta operators were pinned down in defensive positions near the first crash site, taking fire from all sides. Buildings offered little protection, ammunition ran low, casualties mounted. Soldiers dragged wounded comrades through alleys under constant fire. Medical aid was improvised, performed in the dark under extreme stress. Requests for armored support became urgent. U.S. commanders had originally declined to deploy tanks or armored vehicles, believing they would escalate tensions and slow operations. Now, that decision proved costly. Malaysian and Pakistani UN forces were hastily assembled to form a relief convoy, bringing armored personnel carriers and tanks unfamiliar to American units. Coordination took hours. Maps were outdated, radio frequencies mismatched. Meanwhile, the trapped soldiers fought through the night. The battle transformed Mogadishu's streets into a maze of danger. Somali fighters used hit-and-run tactics, firing from windows, doorways, and rooftops before disappearing into the crowds. Civilians, militia, and gunmen blended together, making identification nearly impossible. The urban environment neutralized many technological advantages. Night vision provided some edge, but confusion and exhaustion dulled reactions. Shortly after midnight, the relief convoy finally entered the city. Progress was slow and brutal. Vehicles took heavy fire. Soldiers clung to armored hulls, returning fire into the darkness. When the convoy reached the first crash site, it began extracting survivors, but there was no room for everyone. Some soldiers were forced to move on foot, running alongside the vehicles in what would later be called the Mogadishu Mile. At dawn on October 4th, the battered force reached the safety of a Pakistani stadium. The battle was over. 18 American soldiers were dead, more than 70 wounded. Somali casualties were estimated in the hundreds, though exact numbers were never confirmed. Images of a dead American soldier being dragged through the streets were broadcast worldwide, shocking the public and reshaping perceptions of the mission. The political consequences were immediate. U.S. public support for intervention collapsed. Within months, American forces withdrew from Somalia. Aid remained at large until his death 3 years later. For the U.S. military, Mogadishu became a defining lesson on urban warfare, mission creep, intelligence limitations, and the cost of underestimating irregular forces. The Battle of Mogadishu was not a defeat in the traditional sense. The soldiers fought with discipline, courage, and sacrifice under impossible conditions. But strategically, it marked a turning point. It reshaped American foreign policy, reinforcing reluctance to commit ground forces without clear objectives and overwhelming support. Long after the gunfire faded, the echoes of Mogadishu continued to influence how modern wars would be fought and how carefully they would be entered.